Well, it got national news yesterday on what was supposed to be first day of former KCK police detective Roger Golubski's long-awaited trial. He was found dead in an apparent suicide. Matt Flener, Channel 9 KMBC, has been all over the story. Matt, good morning. How surprised were you by the news yesterday?
Pete, good morning. Everybody was shocked in the courtroom. We were all sitting there right around 9 o'clock, and I think it was about 9:05 where the judge and the prosecution, the defense, all came to the tables, and we all were watching them, and Roger Golubski was not there. This was the first day of his trial. Jury selection was supposed to begin. The jury had already been there. They had been coming in the doors of the federal courthouse in Topeka. Everybody else had, but Roger Golubski was not there. And a court official from the U.S. Marshal's office came in, announced that the last known location for him was at his house at 8:57 a.m. The judge issued a warrant for his arrest, and shortly after, we heard from Edwardsville police that Roger Golubski was found dead on his back porch from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Just a wild turn of events yesterday, both in Topeka and in Edwardsville.
Now, is it fair to say, I mean, was there some concern that this was possible, that he would take this way out? Did the judge consider this at all when electing basically to allow him to be home instead of behind bars before the trial started?
So there's some context here. Roger Golubski, according to his attorneys, needed dialysis. So they made the argument very early on, after Roger Golubski was arrested back in 2022 by the FBI, that he needed to be home to receive dialysis for kidney failure. And so the judge agreed with that, saying his care would have been too complicated within the U.S. Bureau of Prisons. I'm sure they have others on dialysis, but at the same time, pretrial confinement, they allowed him to stay at home, gave him plenty of conditions on his house arrest, saying, hey, you can't go anywhere, you got to, except for dialysis, you can't have a firearm, which obviously everybody's wondering now, how in the world did he have this firearm at home and take his life, according to investigators, on the first day of his trial. And I think a lot of people are questioning, why he did it on that day, that specific day, which was yesterday, why he did it then. Why, he could have had any other day, but this day of the trial, he decided to be in control and take his own life. And that, I think, was, let's just be honest, a lot of people felt it was a slap in the face after what they say they've been through over Roger Golubski's career there in KCK.
Matt Flener, Channel 9 KMBC reporter, is here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. Now, I know his defense attorney told the judge that Golubski had been despondent about the media coverage. Was the defense, what were they planning on doing when it came to this case? If the media coverage was something that he was despondent over, was there a claim or a potential defense that he was some kind of fall guy as something bigger? Or, I'm just wondering how he came to that conclusion and what that might have meant for the defense's argument throughout this trial.
Yeah, that kind of came out of left field for us yesterday when we heard that, because the media coverage has been strong throughout this whole ordeal, but it hasn't been as strong as it was over the past couple of years. We'll all remember the case of Lamont McIntyre, who was exonerated back in 2017. And some context on McIntyre's case, Roger Golubski, according to McIntyre, framed him in a 1994 murder. So Lamont McIntyre spent 23 years in prison for a crime he did not commit. In 2017, he was let go, and then in 2018, Lamont McIntyre sued the federal government and ultimately said Roger Golubski was at the center of his framing for this 1994 murder. So there was plenty of media coverage of Roger Golubski leading up to that, of course, back in 2022 with his arrest. And we've been covering it here and there with some hearings and some motions, but we were all very shocked that this idea about being despondent about media coverage was the excuse for him not showing up to court yesterday, according to his attorney.
Wow. All right. Matt Flener on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. So as you're in the courtroom yesterday and this news comes down, what about folks on the other side? What about those who are looking for justice? What has their reaction been?
I think that's the focus, where the focus needs to be. There was a group that came over from Kansas City, Kansas, on a bus, and they stood outside the federal courthouse. Some of Roger Golubski's former alleged victims saying, he terrorized me for decades, and they were, like I said, just shocked at this news that he took his life. And they firmly believe that they will never be able to see the justice that they were seeking. A lot of people very upset, not only with Golubski, but the system that allowed these actions by Golubski to continue. They're within the Kansas City, Kansas Police Department. A lot of people have called for reforms and accountability. They want to see the records of Golubski's actions there over decades in KCK. And I think a lot of people were just left with this empty feeling yesterday after Golubski, according to investigators, again, took his own life.
Since you were on this case, I mean, I know that I don't think Kansas has carried out an execution in decades. Was that ever on the table in this case, or was that always, highly unlikely when it came to what kind of repercussions he was going to potentially face?
Right, he was facing a life sentence.
Okay.
I don't believe death penalty was on the table. And again, this is a federal case here, so a life sentence in this case. But it would have put Roger Golubski away for his remaining years. But but again, yesterday just ended in one gunshot there.
So what happens from the standpoint of what you think, Matt, covering this story, which, as you noted, has now gotten national attention? What should the takeaway be? What is the bow on this tragedy that, frankly, as we just talked about, the victims involved, the alleged victims involved, are never going to have justice for what at least they won't feel, I imagine, like they're going to have justice for themselves and what happened to them. So what do you think the story ends with?
Yeah, that's the difficult part here. Of course, this case is now closed, and there is actually another case that was moving forward, a federal case against Roger Golubski and 3 other co-defendants for a sex trafficking ring there in KCK. I talked to the U.S. Attorney's Office yesterday, and they say that case is actually going to continue with the 3 other co-defendants. Of course, you can't prosecute Golubski here, but there may be some more information that comes out in that case that may have also come out in the case that was just dismissed that may lead to some sort of answers about what happened with Golubski, what happened with the command staff there in the KCK Police Department that may have known about his actions or seen his actions and maybe not done something. And so there may be some answers that come from that case. There's also a civil lawsuit moving forward against the Kansas City, Kansas Police Department. So, these opportunities for answers, they're still out there. I think it's going to be a bit more elusive now that the things that Roger Golubski knew may never be known. But there could be some other answers that are out there with those other cases that are moving forward.
Matt Flener, keep up the great work, man. Thanks so much.
Pete, always love being on your show. Thanks.
Thank you. Matt Flener on KCMO. Pete Mundo as we roll till 6:30.